Hey guys, Greg here. I want to share how I've been working on up to 4 different side projects from my phone using Claude Code. So a couple of months ago, when OpenClaw was super hyped on the internet, this was maybe February and March 2026, I bought into the hype and I ended up buying a Mac Mini to be able to automate a lot of my side projects and a lot of my work into this system. If you don't know about OpenClaw, it's an open source project that went viral around February or March 2026. There was a lot of hype around it because people were saying, hey, I'm automating all my business, I'm automating all my development work to this thing. So I decided to buy into the hype and I ended up getting a Mac Mini, which is right here. And I started to work on the setup. The idea was that OpenClaw was going to sit on top of a bunch of sub-agents and AI automation workflows, and one agent is going to be able to manage a lot of the work that goes into delegating this work or whatever you're asking it to do. It's going to be able to delegate this automate task and basically do everything for you. Now, the thing that I wanted to do with this was to automate my side projects, automate my marketing and analytics and everything. But in the end, I struggle a little bit with the setup because it required access to a lot of different things. The way I wanted it to work is that I would chat to it from Slack and I would give it things to do, and then sub-agents would pick up some of this work and get to work. The problem that I had with this setup was that the main agent, while it was delegating things to the other agents didn't know much about the other agents or the context in which they were. So they were requiring access that they already had access to. So they were getting confused in between who was in charge of doing what and who had access to what. So there was a lot of back and forth with me and the main agent to get the sub-agents to work. So in the end, I thought this is taking too much time. I'm not getting much benefit out of it. And also, for the short period of time that I used it, I ended up using a lot of tokens from Claude. So let's say that within a couple of days, I was spending maybe $60 in tokens. And this was not actually work that it was doing. I think it was just the communication between the agents, and the setup probably wasn't the best setup. I think if I were to set it up again, I'll probably get better results now that I've learned more about how agents and sub-agents work. But after a couple of weeks, I decided to stop using OpenClaw and to switch directly into Claude Code. And I found a different way in which I could still interact with the computer without me being physically present by the computer. So after shutting down OpenClaw in my computer, I was still interested in having a setup that would allow me to chat remotely to the computer or to an AI agent that would eventually do some work for my side projects. So I looked around for different ways to do this, and I landed on this workflow that worked for a while, and then I jumped into something better. So the workflow that I set up was having Tailscale, which is an app that connects your devices to a different device via some kind of networking tunnel that it creates. And this allowed me to have a connection from my phone to the computer. And then the other piece of the puzzle is an application called Terminus, which allows you to set up a terminal session from your phone into the system that you are connected to using Tailscale or some other software. So I got a lot of usage out of this because I could set up the connection and then just remote SSH into my computer and start a session from the terminal with Claude Code, and then get into the side projects and prompt Claude to go and do things for me. So this worked pretty well for a while, but to be honest, I don't like the interface of Terminus or terminals in general. I feel like you gotta know what you're doing, and even though I have the background on using some of these tools, I just don't like it. But it worked quite well for a while, and I was using it pretty often. I would find myself using it when I am commuting, when I'm on a walk somewhere, and I'm just chatting to Claude directly on my phone, but the actual session is running on my computer and it's doing a lot of things, which is already amazing. One of the things that I don't like about using Terminus is that it doesn't allow you to add images, at least not that I know of, or I don't think I even tried. And this is something that can be quite useful. If you're chatting with an AI agent, you can give it an image if you encounter an error, and it's going to have a look at that image. It's going to determine what's happening, what are the files involved. It's going to save you time, because instead of explaining what the issue that you encounter is, you just send it an image and it's going to be able to determine what the problem is and try to find a way to solve it. In the end, I think I ended up using Tailscale and Terminus for about 2 weeks. And then Claude came up with a feature called remote control, which is essentially what I was doing with Tailscale and Terminus, but it's running directly from the Claude interface. So the way it works is that you need to enable remote work from your settings, and then you can enable it for every session, which is what I did. So once you have it set up, you can open a terminal in your computer and you can access it directly from the Claude app in your phone. And this interface is so much better than having the Terminus application, because it allows you to add screenshots and the interface is just way nicer to read. You're in a familiar environment similar to something like ChatGPT or Claude, and it's so much easier to access. I don't have to set up the connection with Tailscale. I don't have to create a terminal session. It's going to be running on whatever session that you already have on your computer. But a couple of notes on using remote control. This is something that you can only set up once you have a Pro subscription. So you need to be paying for Claude to be able to access this. And the other thing is that you have to keep refreshing your sessions. And this is something that you might experience with other models, in which you keep a session running for too long, and eventually it's going to take longer for you to come up with an answer, because it's accumulating more and more context, and eventually things become a little bit slower. And I noticed this with remote control, in that I kept like 5 different sessions open and I kept using them every now and then. Eventually the sessions started to become a little bit slower to load, a little bit slower to reply. So just close the sessions once you're done with the work, and then you might still need access to something like Tailscale and Terminus to be able to open up new sessions on your computer from your phone. It's not like you can directly start a new session from the app on your phone. You have to set up the session first on the computer with the CLI, and then you'll have access to it from your phone. So comparing this with OpenClaw, this setup for me works way better. I don't have to think too much about creating a bunch of sub-agents and trying to automate as much as possible. I think this is a more direct way to still have a very powerful tool from your phone without having to think about fully delegating your whole system into an AI agent without you having too much control of it. I have about 5 different terminal sessions open on my computer at any given time. One is working on the calorie tracking app, one is working on the backend of that calorie tracking app, one is working on my marketing website, and another one is working on a different app that's to do with content creation as well. So when I compare this back to OpenClaw, this is like one step back from automating everything, in that I'm still manually prompting each of the sessions to go and do specific things. Rather than having a main agent that sits above all these different sessions, I'm happy to do this myself, because I'm at a point where the things that I want, I'm not able to automate that easily, given that I have to think about how the system is going to work, and it still takes a little back and forth to arrive to the right solution. There is one automation that I quite like about part of the setup that I have, which is every week there is a scheduled task that runs through all the GitHub repos that I have, and it's going to look through the commits and the work that has been done. It's going to analyze that, it's going to create a summary, and it's going to make a blog post and update it on my website. And it's also going to add an image to it. And I think this is really cool because it's creating content for me, even though I'm not actively working on this. It's running weekly and is gathering all the things that I did for that week, putting into a blog post format and putting it into my website. Now, I'm not doing anything with this blog, but I think it's important to keep track of some of the things that you're doing and also showcase the different projects that you might be working on. One important thing to keep in mind with working with some of these agents and automations is the level of access that you give to each of them. For example, for some of the side projects that I'm working on, if they are live, I'm not giving access to the agents to access everything. I'm giving it very limited access. So I'm giving it access to the code and to be able to push code. But for some of my other projects where I haven't shipped them yet, I haven't published them, then I don't have that many restrictions because I don't really care what happens. So one of these agents has got access to the database, it's got access to the server, it's got access to the codes, and it's able to publish things into 2 different servers, look at the database, analyze the errors, look at the logs. So this is quite useful for me at this stage, but at some point when I publish one of these projects and it goes live, I wouldn't want the AI to have access to all of this information, given that if it pushes something that is wrong or it goes rogue, it could, it could delete everything. So this is something that you gotta be careful about, but it's very dependent on the type of project that you're working on. So after trying OpenClaw and Claude Code remote, and potentially even looking into Claude Code Teams, which is a new feature, I know I can automate a lot more than what I'm currently doing, but for now, I'd rather keep things simple and keep having a direct input into the AI before automating anything else. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope that you found this useful. If you like this type of content, subscribe and I'll see you in the next video.